Next speaker is Dan Barker. He's co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation and author of Godless, How an Evangelical Preacher Became One of America's Leading Atheists. I believe he holds the record as the most used speaker on our Speakers Bureau over time. I don't know if we have official stats on that, but everyone in the staff make sure to remind us that that's true. And he's one of my favorite speakers in the movement, so help me in thanking and welcoming Dan Barker.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to share some of that stuff with our staff. We need to get more socially aware, I guess. And we're always tweeting and Facebooking, but there's always more we can do. And you're right about updating things all the time. We're expanding our office. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is very crowded right now. We bought a building in 1990, 2 stories, which seemed cavernous at the time. In fact, when we moved in there, I had the entire upstairs to myself, and all the other staff was downstairs. And Annie Laurie bought a sign to put over my door. It's still there, the man upstairs. Today, there's about, well, this week there were 18 or 19 people in the building, including 4 full-time attorneys, and this summer, 5 interns or 9 legal staff working and cranking out letters of complaint and litigation. We are so crammed and crowded. People are sitting on each other's laps, which is kind of fun. But our library has been turned into an intern place, and it's so crowded that we can't squeeze anyone else in there. So we're going to expand, and we're going to break ground in August. We're in Madison, Wisconsin. We're going to add a 3rd floor to our current 2-story building, where the library is going to go, and then a 4th story building behind us, and our legal staff will have the entire 2nd floor. It'll be nice. And then one of our dreams, after we get a legal secretary and graphic designer, one of our dreams would be an almost full-time social media person. I think we could probably employ somebody just to do that, just to keep things up because of the way the world is changing and going. And thanks, David, for your talk about Hispanics. Are you here? Did he leave? Oh, he's coming back in. All right. So the Freedom from Religion Foundation, we started in 1976. I wasn't there then. I was a Christian preacher at the time. I was the guy on campus, in high school campus. I was that guy with my Bible under my arm, preaching to you poor lost sinners. On high school and in college, I was fearless. I would just walk up to you and tell you about the love of Jesus. And I really thought I was doing you a big favor. And, because you would see the love and you would feel the Holy Spirit and the words of God, and you would, what's more important than your eternal destiny? Are there people like that on your campus that you know about, right? So I was that guy. I changed my mind, obviously, and I tell the story in my book, Godless, and the earlier book, Losing Faith in Faith, about how I changed my mind. In 1976, when FFRF started, I was still out on the road as an evangelist, preaching. I spent a couple years in Mexico. But I joined the staff in 1987, when the foundation was still pretty small. In 1987, we had barely 1,000 members, about 1,500 members. Today, almost 20,000 members of the organization. These are paid-up, dues-paying members. We actually have almost 80,000 names on our list from people that were members and have not renewed in that, but about 20,000 paid-up full members. So we can afford to have a pretty decent-sized staff now. We work to keep state and church separate and to educate the public about the views of non-believers, whatever we call ourselves. We don't care. Atheist, agnostic, secular humanist, athean. There was a guy who doesn't want to be an ist, so he calls himself an athean. And what we say around the office, we don't care what we call ourselves. We all disbelieve in the same God. So, and we're really excited about the Secular Student Alliance. We have immense respect for what August and Liz and all the others of you have been doing over the years. An amazing accomplishment, an amazing success story. Imagine, August was just a student running a club, and he turned that into a national organization. Isn't that impressive? And look what it's been doing, and look at the growth of it. And as Neil told you this morning, there was now a memorandum of understanding between our 2 groups where we are cooperating on legal grounds, because SSA is doing something we would love to be doing, but we just can't. You know, we just can't do too much of that, although I'll go anywhere. I think one of the reasons I get invited a lot is because you can get me for free. I'll just show up. I'll give a talk. I'll do a debate. If you have money, fine. But if you don't, I'll just do it. But FFRF is involved in legal things and in constitutional things that the SSA has to be careful about because of attorney-client and all of those things that go with the legality. My talk today, by the way, is how to be a constitutional troublemaker. And on your campus, there will arise some legal issues and legal questions, or maybe not even on your campus, maybe just in your life, in your city, at your city hall, or in your state government or something. How can you be, like we are, a constitutional troublemaker? With this SSA FFRF understanding now, you will have direct access, preferential access to some really good constitutional attorneys who will go to bat for you. Our attorneys are so good at this now, we can usually get a letter out the very day, or if not that, the next day. And sometimes that's important. A high school student might learn at the last minute, oh, they're having prayer at my graduation next Tuesday. What am I going to do about that? How can we jump on it? How can we get at that? Oh, there's a gospel team coming into my school Thursday afternoon to give a concert during school hours. Is that right? It's going to happen Thursday. What do I do about it? What are my legal rights? You can make a difference, and you can be a troublemaker. And I think, by the way, troublemaker is one of the highest compliments you could earn. Actually, the religious right is causing the troubles, but you can cause trouble to them. So the first thing every one of you should do, and this is really simple, you're all smart, and it just takes a little bit of time, but every one of you must do this. Memorize the First Amendment. It's very short, First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. Memorize it. Just get it into your mind, and so you can just quote it and say it. We all know about, freedom of religion and freedom of speech, but just be able to say it out to someone. How many of you can say it word for word? I bet you there's about a few of you. Frank knows everything, of course. Just make it a point. Today, go online, just get it and just memorize it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, or to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Pretty simple, right? You can all memorize that. And you hear people say, well, it starts with Congress, so the states can do what they want, right? It says Congress shall make no law. The states can do what they want. Well, one way to answer that is by pointing out that the 14th Amendment makes the First Amendment apply to all the states. And there's now a lot of case law that shows that. States can't do what they want. There are some things that are hardwired into our government that you can't vote away by a local vote. If their argument is right, you might point out, that would equally apply not just to religion, but to freedom of speech and of the press. Can a local government kick out the printing, their newspaper in town? They can't do that. The First Amendment applies equal protection and to all citizens. So memorize the First Amendment, use it. It's a great tool. It's a great part of what makes America, America. Other countries wish they had. I know Canadians who wish that their government had strong, and in the UK, they're saying, we wish we had something like your First Amendment in the United States. It's a wonderful document, a wonderful part of the Bill of Rights. So if I had to sum up in one word, how can you become a constitutional troublemaker? Of course, it's broader than that, but if I had to sum it up in one word, what would that word be? How can you be a constitutional troublemaker? That's close, yeah? Yeah, it's close. Neil talked about it a little bit this morning. The word is complain. Complain. If you see something going on, make a complaint. In fact, he even pointed out that if you take a legal action, if it has to go to court, what's the first thing you file with the court? You file a complaint. You're complaining about it. You should complain. We've all heard about some of these modern brave young people, Jessica Alquist, Zach Copeland, Harrison Hopkins, the kid Daniel Koster, and the kid in Oklahoma, Gage Pulliam. You know his story? He lives in a little town out in eastern Oklahoma, right by the Arkansas border, very, very conservative. And they had 10 Commandments monuments on a plaque in every single wall of every single room in his school, all over the whole city, the whole area. And here he is out in this really right-wing area. He's a smart kid. He just complained. He said, I don't think this is right. He didn't know what to do. He's a high schooler. He just made a complaint. And we sent a letter pointing out, by the way, this has already been decided by the Supreme Court. This is wrong. This is illegal. And this school superintendent read the letter and consulted with their legal counsel and said, they have to come down legally. And so this one kid, one brave high school kid complained, and all the 10 Commandments monuments came down in all the schoolrooms in that whole area. What a victory. Years ago, that would have had to be a lawsuit. That would have been, that could have gone to the Supreme Court. Well, it already has gone to the Supreme Court. And so, which is kind of nice. You can point out to them, you want to fight this? It's already been decided. There's already the law. It's got to be groups and individuals, people like you and groups like ours, that are complaining to enforce the law. There are no such thing as constitutional policemen, like on the highway looking for your speed limit. Where are the constitutional police? Well, we are. There's nobody out there looking and saying, by the way, you're breaking the law. And they're going to keep doing it. We complained about prayers in Mississippi high school football games. And the superintendent of the school district said, we've been taking this attitude that, this might not be right, but we're just going to keep doing it until someone tells us to stop. Can you imagine that? What kind of a message is that superintendent telling to the students? Well, it's against the law, but we're going to keep doing it until we get caught. Well, the only way they're going to get caught, the only way they're going to stop is if you complain. You have to speak out. We can't just come in as outsiders. We can't come in as a Wisconsin group, and we can try, but they can ignore that. It has to be someone local. It has to be that Gage Pulliam in that Oklahoma high school who has the standing to show, I've been exposed to this wrong, and I am going to complain. Jessica Alquist and Gage and them modern ones. And back in the mid-1990s, there was a kid named Adam Butler at Alabama High School in Birmingham, Alabama. He went to his principal and he said, I want to start an atheist club on my high school in Alabama. And the principal said to him directly, there will be no atheist club at this high school. And Adam said, oh, really? He contacted the ACLU and he contacted us. They got 2 letters. And a week later, there was an atheist club. They just need to know. Back in the 1940s, it was the McCollum kids who were sitting and they were having religious instruction in the class. That one went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. 1948 case of McCollum versus Board of Education. It's a case that we have cited over and over and over again. It's a landmark case. And the little kids, Daniel McCollum and Jim McCollum, they're now older and retired now. We've had Jim on our radio show. We've had Daniel on too on our radio show, talking on Free Thought Radio, talking about this. And by the way, Daniel, the little boy in the classroom, later went on. He got interested in the law because of this. His family, they were shunned. They complained and they lost. Then they sued and they lost. And then they appealed and they lost. And they went to the Supreme Court and they lost. And the mother said, but we know we're right. We know these people have never read the Constitution. So they appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court and they won by an 8-1 decision. The McCollum decision, we use that all the time. These were just kids in a classroom complaining about this intrusion of religion into their classroom. In the 1950s, a young high school kid named Ellery Shemp in Pennsylvania, they were having reading from the Bible, and they were having the Lord's Prayer. And he didn't like that. He's a smart high school kid, and he said, this isn't right. So when they were reading from the Bible, he brought the Quran in, and he held it up to read from it. And then when they had the Lord's Prayer, he just stayed seated, and he didn't do it. And he was told he had to do it. And he complained to the school, and they did nothing. And that went clear to the Supreme Court. In fact, this is the 50th anniversary of the Shemp decision, which was decided in 1963, just a couple of weeks ago in 1963. And it's just a kid in school complaining and making a difference. There was a young woman, her name is Annie Laurie. She was in middle school in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin winters can be kind of chilly. And her middle school required all the girls to wear dresses to school. And when you're walking 6 blocks to school in 20 degrees below zero weather with the wind blowing, and the boys get to wear pants, but the girls didn't. She went to her school and she said, "This doesn't seem right." And she and her friend complained to the school, and the school finally said, "You know, you're right about that. No one's complained yet." So they changed the policy. Annie Laurie's mother, Anne, was wrote the very first editorial in the state about abortion rights back in the 1960s, complained to the government, and they noticed that it was the church all the time that was on the other side, fighting against women's rights. And so Annie Laurie watched her mom go to these hearings, and they went to a hearing at the city council meeting to talk about these women's issues with the city. But before the council meeting started, a priest got up and said a prayer at a seat of secular government. And Anne is thinking, well, wait a minute, the priests are the enemy. They're the ones fighting us, and yet they're cozying up to the government. And there's a priest up there with the mayors, and that doesn't seem right. So she threw out her speech, and she complained about that. She said, "This doesn't seem right. Here we are complaining about this, and there they are." And afterwards, a reporter came up to her and said, "So you're complaining about the prayer. Oh, who are you?" She gave her name. "My name is Anne." And he said, "Well, are you with a group?" And she said, "Well, there's a bunch of people in Madison. We just want to be free from religion." And he said, "Free from religion?" She said, "Yeah, we want freedom from religion." So he wrote a story in the newspaper. There's a group of people who want freedom from religion, that want to, complaining about prayers at the city council. And then her phone started ringing. People saying, "How can I join that group? How can I join?" She said, "Well, give me your phone number." And, that was back, you remember typewriters? That was back in the typewriter on a dining room table with some index cards. He started collecting his name. They started a little group of people who wanted freedom from religion. It grew. They started a little newsletter, and the rest is history. They became incorporated in 1978. IRA became tax exempt, and decided to make it alliterative, Freedom from Religion Foundation. And today, of course, now almost 20,000 people. It was from people who just complained. The daughter, Annie Laurie, when she went to college at the University of Wisconsin, Chris, you probably know this story, don't you? She was getting ready to graduate in the 1970s, and she discovered on the program, on the announcement, that there was going to be prayer at graduation. At the University of Wisconsin, they're going to have prayer at the graduation. And she said, "Wait a minute, I'm the one who studied, I'm the one who worked hard, I'm going to get to graduation, and I have to listen to someone else's prayer?" And she said, why are they doing that? And the student said, "We don't know, we've always done that." "Well, who's in control of that?" And it was a student government thing that controlled the graduation. So Annie Laurie went to the student government, and she said, "Why are we having prayer at graduation?" And they looked at each other and said, "Well, we've always done it." And she said, "Well, do we have to do it?" And they said, "Do we have to do it?" "No, we don't have to do it, so let's not do it." So they didn't have prayer that graduation, and it hit the newspapers. They broke a 150-year tradition. It did not have prayer. Well, nobody missed it, and they never had prayer since. And the other schools in the state followed suit and said, "Yeah, we don't have to do that either. It's a more diverse country." So it was just a student in the school asserting her right to make a complaint, and look what happened from that. So, it's great to talk. It's great to have conferences, and I love them, and I'm a former preacher, and so I could talk forever. I like to say that the word reverend was a typo. Did you know that? The first letter was originally an N. You've heard the saying that when all is said and done, usually more is said than done. We need to talk, of course, but Annie Laurie and Ann and the FFRF, our attitude is, let's get something done. Let's have our meetings and let's talk, but let's make a difference in the world. Let's complain. Let's be troublemakers. Let's do something that makes a difference. So you, with the SSA, have a pipeline to FFRF. You can go to our website and report a complaint of a violation in your school or in your city or in your state or your county, and we know what to do about it. The attorneys there's 4 full-time attorneys. They're really busy. Last year, there were more than 2,500 complaints that came into our office. And this year, it's going to be more than that. And they don't all turn into lawsuits. We have about 13 lawsuits right now in the courts. Lawsuits and litigation is really time-consuming and very expensive. And the idea is to try to stop these abuses without going to court. And if you can do that, it's just as valuable a victory as going to court, just like the McCollums had to go to the Supreme Court. Well, now we have that precedent. We don't have to go. We can use that as a precedent to stop abuses. So last year, there were more than 150 actual victories, we call them. And you should hear our attorneys or the interns when they get a letter of a victory. They come, yay, I got one. We're having a race day this summer. The 5 legal interns we have in there, we're going to have a race day. Who can get out the most letters? There's backlogs of letters and complaints. But they've got a system, because it falls into 15 or 20 different kinds of things that we've done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. They've got template letters ready to go. In many cases, you can just fill in the blanks. As long as you have done your research and your homework, and we know who we're complaining to, what about, as far as we know, we can get letters out really quick. And sometimes the interns themselves, we have to eyeball them. And Annie, Lori, and I, sometimes we sign most of them, but the attorneys sign them as well. So we can move quick. If you have an issue, we have a lot of FAQs that are available to you, because maybe it's something we can't complain about. Maybe it's something we would like to change, but legally we cannot. And so it would be a waste of time to even try. But often there are things we can do and things that you can do. And as I think one of the recurrent themes of this conference has been to not be ashamed to speak out, not to be ashamed to be who you are, to assert yourself, to be empowered, to recognize we all have equal opportunities on our campuses. You people don't need to know that because you're leaders of secular groups. But sometimes people will ask you, well, who do you think you are, I just read Christopher Hitchens' book, Letters to a Young Contrarian, and he points out that when people ask him, well, who do you think you are, he likes to calmly reply, who wants to know? We're all the same. We're all human beings. We're all equal citizens, and we can complain. We can make a difference. So I encourage each of you, after all the important talking is done, make a difference, change the world in some way, complain in some way, and you have the law behind you, and we can make a difference to moving this to the secular nation that we were intended to be in the first place. We have a couple minutes for questions, or shall we just go eat? No? Well, there's one question here. Is there any part of the U.S. that's under-reporting? I don't think so. We hear from everywhere. We get a lot in the South, obviously. But look at Jessica. She's in Rhode Island. We get complaints from all over the country. Our attorneys they've broken it down by geography, by federal districts, and they've also broken it down by certain topics as well. But the South tends to be more abusive on a lot of these things, or the South tends to be more disrespectful to established law than a lot of other parts of the country. But it's all over the U.S. There's one. Yeah, did you hear a question? Well, as far as our group is concerned, it's a legal question. If the problem you're encountering is the school violating your rights or the school promoting religion, then it's wrong. And it's up to you how visible you want to be in complaining about that being wrong or not. And a real simple rule of thumb, it doesn't work on every case, but a real simple rule of thumb, if you're trying to decide if a certain governmental action is constitutional, just ask yourself, is this government speech or is this free speech? There's a difference. Is this actor, is this person who's acting, this government actor, are they speaking for the government or are they speaking for themselves? So is the nativity scene right on City Hall that looks like it's the city promoting that? That's government speech. Is the nativity scene on a public forum in the city where it's obvious that it's a private organization and not the city? Well, that's free speech. So if you kind of keep that simple thing in mind, there's a difference between free speech and government speech. Answers a lot of questions. If your university is putting roadblocks in your way, or if your school or high school is treating you in some way that's different, or you're even limiting your free speech, then you have a complaint. Or at least you can ask us if there's anything we can do about that complaint. You have to decide how visible and how vulnerable you want to be. I think most people at this conference want to go for it, don't you? You want to be troublemakers. Yeah, Joel said yeah. Okay. So are we done? Oh, the main complaint. I think it's public schools, a variety of complaints in public schools is a big one. But I think the main single complaint we get is government prayer. Prayer at city councils and mayors and that kind of a thing. We get that a lot. But schools are a big deal, and we take schools as a higher priority, not just because it's students involved, but because sometimes the time issues are important. It has to happen quick. But in schools, it can be a religious choir director in the music program who's doing a whole Christmas program at their church, right? That's a big complaint. Religious literature in backpacks that kids take home with them that private groups send out. A proselytizing teacher. Gideon Bibles being handed out on school property. We have 2 lawsuits in Pennsylvania over 10 Commandments monuments, all right, by the front door on the grounds of the school. So symbols are a big thing that happen as well. Thank you.